What is going on, folks? I am Goat. Welcome back to Warframe. Hi. Hi. So, I've seen this looming discussion about, there are some people, and I'm not saying a large group, small group, it's kind of just this moderate group of people that are having this general complaint with the presence of Warframe and its direction at the moment, specific to frames. About how, they would, like I've heard this from a couple of clan members. I've seen this on Facebook, on Reddit. So it's not like it's just like one or two people that I've heard say this. It's quite a few, actually. But people saying, basically, there's all these Warframes in the game. Why don't they put more focus into fixing old frames and before releasing new ones, right? That's kind of the general thing, because there's frames that do there's frames that do similar things to other frames. And, in ways you can look at it and say, you know what, that's not wrong. Okay, in other ways, look at a lot of these frames. And yes, there are some frames that have kind of replaced, functioning frames of the frames of yesteryear. So, I mean, you talk about like Nezha, right? In Nezha's base form, Nezha is like this unbelievable weapons platform. Okay, throws up Warding Halo. I can actually hit the right shit here. Thank you. So throws up Warding Halo, gets a whole bunch of extra armor, and then can cause a fuck ton of damage vulnerability depending on how much ability strength you throw into the build, right? Those two things alone make him a damage-dealing weapons platform of death, right? Well, what does Ureli do? Ureli throws up Merlina. Merlina, by the way, even though it doesn't show it, does have the same general minute difference, but does have an absorption multiplier. So basically, if she's taking damage, whenever you're casting Merlina, Merlina's hit points will go up to account for that, and you get the same 90% damage reduction. You get the invulnerability time frame while casting, so on and so forth. And then guess what? Sea Snares gives you damage vulnerability, again based on your ability strength. Now, would you want to call Ureli and Nezha the same frame, or at least similar function, or Ureli has replaced Nezha? Absolutely not. Revenant. In the grand scheme, I see the funny-ass argument of Revenant is basically one ability, subsume another ability, and that's really all you need. And as a funny joke, it's actually kind of true. Now, there's a lot more to Revenant than that. Basically, you can enthrall enemies, lifesteal from said enemies. His fourth ability, Dance Macabre, is just kind of meh. So it's usually, like, it doesn't scale worth a shit. So it's usually the best thing to subsume over. And then obviously there's Mesmer Skin. Oh, trying to speak and then a yawn creeps in. Sorry. So, I mean, but yeah, I mean, Revenant's base function is, cast Mesmer Skin, have a bunch of ability strength, get a bunch of charges, become invulnerable each time you lose a charge, have a short period of invulnerability. Excuse me. Which isn't much, by the way, which is why Rolling Guard is usually like one of the go-to mods for his build. That way you can roll, recast Mesmer Skin, rinse and repeat. But is there another frame in the game that does this? Like, has pure just invulnerability based on a number of charges due to your ability strength? Not really. Revenant's kind of his own little thing. Sentient frame. Guess what, though? I have another one. Sentient frame. Nothing like him. Absolutely. Like, this is a pure sentient design frame. Revenant is like an Eidolon frame. Right? I'd say that's a fair assessment. Loki. We've got multiple invisibility frames, but they all do different things. And some of them aren't even invisible. But they are invisible in certain respects. So you've got Loki, the original sleuth frame. Alright? He's got a bunch of invisibility, teleportation functions, decoy for survivability and CC function, disarming function. I mean, just as he sits, he is what he is. Right? You also have something else that can actually outperform Loki in spy missions. Wukong. He just turns into a far cloud and blasts across the fucking map. You also have Varuna. another invisibility frame that can literally just sleuth all over the fucking place for the duration of her first ability. That's great. You also have Cyto 9, another invisible frame, who literally, all you have to do to replenish your invisibility, fuck casting it, just shoot people in the fucking face. All of these frames can get away with this. Are they the same? No. Not even fucking close. Like, Varuna and Wukong would be the closest to the same, and that's saying a lot as far as how much of a stretch that is, okay? I've heard the debate of we have two water frames, Ureli and Hydroid. They're completely different frames. In every respect, they're completely different frames. You know, I've heard and seen the whole, well, there's, you know, multiple, there's too many overlaying pseudo-exalted frames. Bruh. I can... this one hurts my head. If you want to try to make a comparison between Gara, Korra, and Atlas alone, be my guest. Look a fool. They're nothing alike. They're absolutely nothing alike. Guess what? I've heard, oh man, why do we need another electric frame? Does Volt and Gyre do anything the same, except for cause electric damage? No. With Temple's release, oh, got 2 heat frames. Really? Like, really? You're gonna compare Temple to Ember? What the fuck do those two have to do with each other? That's not even apples and oranges. It's like a grape compared to a watermelon. You know? Like, it's painful. I mean, let's break down what it is. You've got an Alchemist frame. You have a Deviri frame. Now, the Alchemist frame is unique all in his own right. There is only one other frame that does the same thing that Lavos does, and that is not use energy. Hildren. Hildren uses shields. Lavos uses cooldowns. The only 2 frames in this fucking game that do that. Kind of like there's only, what, 3 frames that don't have armor, or that don't have shields. You know, Kalervo, Nidus, and Aros. But anyway, we have the Alchemist frame from Deimos. We have the Deviri frame, who is a very intriguing frame all in his own right, that for lack of a better way to put it, doesn't really do anything that any other frame does except for build Overguard, right? We've got the Sleuthy invisibility frame that also has invincibility function with an augment, also has decoy function, and with a subsume that can become its own tanky ass thing in itself. That's great. Pure tank weapons platform that can cause massive damage vulnerability to pretty much any enemy that doesn't have attenuation. Mr. I'm just not fucking dying today. And by the way, if anybody wants to throw out anything about any frame, because I see this a lot about Revenant. A Revenant's completely unkillable unless you run into a nullifier or violence shows up. Well, first of all, that's lacking information because most of the Corpus combos have some sort of nullification or magnetic proc function, and the nullification function acts just like a nullifier, which can turn your shit off for a short, I think it's like 4 seconds or something like that. You tell me a frame whose survivability is based around an ability that shit gets turned off on that can't die in the same fucking way. Yeah, I'll hold my breath on that one and I'll die. Okay? Nullifiers can kill any frame that has a survivability function based on an ability. So, and that can happen with violence as well. So, yeah, just zip it. Revenant is pretty straightforward. Hildren, very, very specific frame that, albeit she has some very lackluster function in some ways, is also insanely survivable with just a single arcane and purely uses energy from her shields. So she does not use energy in any way. She can collect energy, why her 4th ability can come in handy, because you're just bleeding energy out of everything. But she's a shield maiden. Now, we do have another shield-based frame, right? Shield, we'll say shield type frame. Funny enough, Hystero Strike, it's a shield. They're nothing alike. Dante, definitely one of a kind. No question about it. Dante is a step in the right direction for Overguard. Okay? Overguard by itself. Damn any other part of Dante, okay? the fact that you have an exalted weapon, which is basically a enhanced grimoire, you can combo. He's the ultimate caster frame. Truthfully, him and Lavos are like the ultimate caster frames, but you can combo multiple steps of his abilities and make 4 different, primary casts for his 4th ability. So combo 2-2-4, 3-3-4, 2-3-4, 3-2-4, bingo bongo. I mean, like, there's lots of combinations to do different things. So, and it's regenerative overguard. Granted, it's on a timer, but it regens regardless, which is a really good time. Ureli, the water-based version of Nezha. I'll give you that. But that's not... She's got the CC Riptide, she's got the Sea Snares. I mean, like, Ureli is just an interesting little monster. Her 3rd ability to me is probably the biggest waste because it doesn't scale very well. Me putting Breed Surge on here is just fucking hilarious with damage vulnerability coupled with the Riptide. It's pretty fucking funny. If you haven't ever tried that one, please do. Be my guest. You'll giggle. Citrine, another very interesting frame. Citrine in herself is just such a wild frame. And funny enough, her OP ability, her ultimate ability, is what I typically subsume off because I don't like the screen clutter, I don't like all the animation cast time, and I don't like the fact that if an enemy has overguard, they can still walk the fuck around. If I'm anchoring somebody with rocks, I expect them to be anchored with rocks, okay? That includes an Acolyte. If I can use, Magus Lockdown to hold an Acolyte in place for a short period of time, why doesn't this work, right? But Fractured Blast, energy and health. Where do you think that, like Varuna and Citrine do this in a very similar way? That's fine. Preserving Shell, health regen and damage reduction. And then you can regen that during the timer of its ability just by killing people. The giant crystal butt plug that basically status procs the bejesus around anything within its range as long as it's being attacked by somebody in the party. And then whatever the fuck you want to. Even running her 4 is fine. I just find this to be funny ass, a mix of reducing armor stripping after I think like 65 kills, give or take 45 or 65 kills, and then it's a pure armor strip because I've got corrosive projection on here. But also just a crazy ass amount of survivability just solely based on having a ton of overshields and then collecting a shit ton of health orbs, and on top of preserving shell. Citrine is a really, really good frame. Nova, since her rework, and I know I skipped over, well, no, not yet, I haven't. So Nova, since her rework, I mean, let's just be honest here, okay? Yeah, I've got Breed Surge on here. It's pretty funny with everything having damage vulnerability yet again. Null Star, pure survivability. Now that it's scaled off of ability strength, instead of just having 9 Null Stars floating the fuck around you because you're capped at that bullshit, now you can have an abundance of these fucking things and actually have it to where they're regenning themselves with an augment. It's a good time. Antimatter Drop, albeit it doesn't scale the best, which I can see. I've seen a couple of builds. I've talked with one of my clan members about it. I can understand where Antimatter Drop doesn't necessarily scale the best, and it is a little quirky with its aiming. It's kind of like using the Tenet Envoy. But man, when you aim it right and you have something like Breach Surge active coupled with having them primed with Molecular Prime, shit just dies for normal gameplay. If you're trying to do like level cap, no, this ain't gonna work with a fuck. Breach Surge just for priming up enemies that have already been hit with Molecular Prime, because again, we're applying 100% damage vulnerability on top of just everything else that Molecular Prime does. And then Molecular Fission, as you see, is the augment. You have a 100% chance to regain Null Stars. It's a lot of survivability that they built into it. Protea, the Corpus Frame. Parvos Grandum's Corpus Frame, right? Protea is an intriguing monster of a frame. She's got a ton of survivability coupled between her first and her third ability. Her grenade fans are also her survivability shield satellites. She's got cannons that she throws up in the air that just do a fuck ton of damage that's multiplied, by how many more enemies it can kill. Dispensary gives you, health orbs, energy orbs, and universal ammo, which is always a good time. So if you've got, like, shitty, like, let's say you really dig using, AoE weapons, you can constantly have universal ammo sitting there on the ground waiting for you. Now, personally, her temporal anchor is just not an ability I like. I do understand its function. I just personally like grouping enemies up and shooting them with cannons and then just staying alive and feeding myself energy. It's just a really fun playstyle for me. You do you. Frost. Now, Frost used to be one of my most hated frames up until Overguard came around, and they decided to put an augment on this fucker, which is Icy Avalanche. Icy Avalanche gives you an Overguard cap. Now, another problem with Frost is his energy capacity. No matter how many, like, unless you just cap him out with, energy shards, which as you see, I've got armor here, so I'm not even running energy shards. What I am running, and this has just been goofing about a bunch, but what I have been running is Overguard, basically a bunch of ability strength, some range, and an arcane battery. Coupled with Equilibrium and Nourish, pretty much, and Energy Nexus, just basically never run out of energy, have a shit ton of energy, and thanks to his passive, you gain armor for the more frozen enemies around you. So his first ability freezes enemies, even in a small AoE, and Icy Avalanche freezes enemies, and if you use something like Tenet Glaxion that actually still is applying cold damage, guess what? You're freezing more enemies that way, and you gain armor from all of this. So you can end up with like 1,376 armor or something, or 1,376 energy or some bullshit. Pretty wild. It's a good time. It's another frame you can do this with. Flare is an interesting one. Flare has some very, very interesting function. Again, like I said in the Flare video, the passive in itself is extremely cool. Okay. Just basically hitting the metronome at the proper time, automatically 50% ability efficiency, which means you can tank the bejesus out of your ability efficiency and not give two shits as long as you're pretty good at timing that metronome. Worst ability is not a terrible ability, just is pretty straight and flat, and it is what it is. But Pyrotechnics is the worst of it. Overdrive absolutely makes Flare just go ham. Ripper's Wail, as Pablo said, is the ultimate oh shit, and that is very much what it is. And then the Exalted Solo is just the flame-throwing Lizzie guitar that just basically melts everything in front of you. Flare's kit is very cool. Pretty damn solid. Trinity. Old school Trinity. Now, Trinity used to be the ultimate, support frame. Still can be if you want it to be. Personally, I'm, again, of the normal mindset of the best defense is a good offense, right? So instead of supporting, if you're close to me, sure, I'll heal you. And I'll feed some energy if you're close to me. But I don't really give a shit about that. I'm kind of you're on your own as far as surviving. You go down, I'll come and revive your ass. Trinity's passive is, allies in affinity range gain 50% of Trinity's max energy as health. That's a good thing. Okay? That's just a good thing. Nourish on here because you can get a little spammy, and albeit Nurse is actually on here more for the damage and viral damage output than it is for energy. It's just initially starting the mission is when I use Nourish for energy. All the rest of the times is just for pure damage output. Energy Vampire, true damage of, basically apply true damage, kill enemy, regain a shit ton of your energy. Link, now that it's not capped to just 3, it's based on your ability strength, and it has a longer duration, means you are redirecting a fuck ton of damage across however much ability strength you put on your build, and you're ripping armor off of enemies. And then Blessing is if you happen to take health damage or you need to heal somebody in your party, including your Sentinel, you just cast Blessing. Bingo bongo, everybody's healed. Good time. So, and it gives you damage reduction. It's a good time. I mean, albeit Trinity is not the prime support frame anymore. Funny enough, Overguard frames are typically the support frame these days. Because Overguard just really reduces a lot of problems. Gyre. Gyre with one singular... you don't have to do this. I've seen plenty of builds on Facebook and Reddit that have shown pillage is not necessary. But I'm going to tell you right now, okay, if you feel like being goofy sometime, just do a pillage build. Okay? Just do, a decent strength, pillage build. Prime sure-footed, not even necessary. Multi-efficiency, longer duration for the arc spheres. Arcane Blessing is just, basically because your whole base survivability is based around shields anyway with this build. So Arcane Blessing is, I can handle getting hit with some Toxin procs and not die. That's really why that's there, but usually nothing's going to survive to get close enough to you for that. But in case you get a little bonkers, just saying. Yeah, so, but all it took was cathode, excuse me, it took cathode current coming out to put Gyre back on the map, because when Gyre first came out, Gyre did exactly, well, Gyre did a little bit more than what cathode current does, but when they put the augment out, it really woke Gyre the hell up and made Gyre very good again. Gara. Gara's another frame I did not like, okay? Not for a lack of any kind of problems as to what the hell was going on with the frame, right? No problems with the frame. None whatsoever. Just not my playstyle. With the pseudo-exalted setup, though, with the changes, the Shattered Lash Prime has really made it kind of fun to just go in on the Hulvania calendar and pretty much just use Gara for everything. Okay? Like, melee kills, ability kills, kill these troops, kill those troops. The only thing that I don't use Gara for is breaking containers. That's it. Which, she can do that, but it's a lot of wasted energy. You can just run around with Loki and Carrier and do the same damn thing. Takes longer. Well, no, it doesn't really take longer. It's just you got to do it a couple of missions, depending on the count. But really, personally, with the pseudo-exalted rework, Gara got woke up for me. Sevagoth, squishy, but absolute nuke frame. I mean, let's be honest. Sevagoth got shit on for a couple of years until 2 augments came out for this fucker, and all of a sudden now everybody's like, oh, Sevagoth's the shit! I remember when Sevagoth was shit. Okay? And I still liked Sevagoth at that point in time, so I don't want to hear it. I was a fan of Sevagoth before those augments came out. They just said those augments made Sevagoth a nuke frame, and everybody likes nuke frames, like I said a couple videos ago. Grendel. Grendel got a rework, got way better, but then also had the problem of having the limitation of you know, only having 5 enemies in his belly, and that is the base requirement for him to do anything else. So his survivability, his ability of casting abilities, and everything else requires that you must have at least one dude in your belly to cast a ability. It's always best to keep his belly full. Base star chart, this kind of setup just doesn't work. But if you take his gastro augment and then you put breach surge on this silly bastard and just do some silly bullshit like this, I mean, like, let's just be honest. Let's be clear and concise and honest about this, okay? So we're just going to eat a row of people, okay? Okay, well, we're not going to eat that row of people. That is... I did not look at what I was doing there. I was testing some, See, that won't work. Sorry. Extremists are the one thing that are like, no sir, you ain't eating me today, thanks to Overguard. Cool. Okay, so level 230. Gonna simulate just some, heavy gunners, right? Okay, we're just gonna eat a group of people, then we do breach surge, and then we do this. The only thing left alive is the 4 idiots in my stomach. If I stand here long enough, they'll die. Grendel's a little dumb. Yeah. And his survivability is very much based around Nourish. So, yeah, Grendel's really good. Zaku. Now, I've been running a Condemn build since I was able to put Condemn on him because... simply because Zaku is one of those frames that there's not really a lot of realistic survivability unless you're doing, like, shield regen, shield gating, things like that. Which, granted, the dodge chance on the 4th ability alone does give you survivability. I'm not knocking that, and I'm not saying that there's not ways to get around that. But I'm a very reckless player, so I like to run into crowds like an idiot and do silly shit like that. So putting Condemn over here just locks enemies down for the ghost guns to just blast the shit out of them, especially if they're armor stripped. It just makes very quick work of them. But Zaku, very, very different frame. Now, thus far, find me a frame in this list, aside from Nezha and Ureli, that are doing the same shit. We're 19 frames into this list, and these are not similar frames at all. Getting there. Saren is an absolute monstrosity all her own, okay? Saren is an immense monstrosity of a frame. Is something like this necessary? No. Does it help you survive? Yes. Is there other ways to survive? Yes. But this is just like, fuck you. That's what this is. This is just fuck you. Saren casts spores, has just pure imbued massive amounts of toxic damage. If you want to use miasma, you can. It doesn't scale worth a shit. For me, it's in between Molt and miasma, and since I already put a survivability function on there anyway, I might as well just use miasma and let it do its thing. Saren is a goddamn monstrosity of a frame, though. She really is. Cora, the crazy cat lady. Another pseudo-exalted frame. Cora was always my looting frame and my excavation frame, things like that. I only using her for defenses because it makes the fucking missions take forever. So unless you're trying to get like 8,000 acolytes to spawn, over a very long way, because I mean you can make a since they're 3-wave now, you can make an 18-wave defense last for an hour if you do a defense with Cora, because unless you're whipping them out of the fucking cage, yeah, it just takes forever. It's really annoying. That's why I do defenses solo most of the time, because there's inevitably somebody with a limbo or a Cora that always comes in and you're just like, bruh, why? Excavations, it's great, man. It's great. Not defenses, okay? Even mobile defenses, it's awesome because it keeps everybody away from the mobile defense target. Just not defenses, please. No, Cora is exceptionally good. You ensnare enemies, you whip them, throw a cage up, you can whip them in the cage, they get bonus damage that way. This shit, Cora is just good. Wukong. Now, Wukong is widely considered to be the most player-friendly frame in this game. Lots of understandability as to why that is. The passive alone says it. After taking fatal damage, Wukong automatically uses one of his mastered survival techniques. These techniques can only be invoked 3 times per mission. Basically, you can fucking die 3 times and come back to life. You have a automatic specter based on ability strength that you can just call and dissolve in an ability. You can cloud walk, so massive status cleansing, healing, and movement. Okay? Third ability used to be the third ability. Defy really wasn't all that bad because it was an armor builder, so just more survivability. But now, with the pseudo-exalt, or with the exalted rework in itself, being able to put arcanes on there, now Primal Fury has gotten really fucking good. So going over, Defy or whatever the hell, I think it was Defy, makes Wukong just that much cooler. Yes. And you can still do the Monkey Slam build. Here's one you haven't seen in a long fucking time because I hated this son of a bitch. And I have been working on this build for just a touch over a month. Now, I will tell you that the war cry on here is completely stupid and completely useless. Within reason. It gives a tiny, tiny little buff. And I do mean tiny. You don't need it. You can put anything else over the first ability. Hell, you can put anything over the fourth ability if you want to, because effigy is really just for more these days for a little bit of CC and some credit farming. But Warcry does have a function behind this build, and I know somebody's going to go, Warcry, what the fuck? So going with cold, okay? Going with cold damage, because I kept going back to electric, okay? I was trying to use Chroma on the basis of a shield regen frame. So take the shield damage, get your armor, have a nice day, right? So the passive is you get an additional jump and bullet jump. Okay, that's extra movement. Warcry, obviously diminished speed increase, that's whatever. It's the armor increase that we give a shit about, okay? And this is based off of your base stats, not what the hell you can get from the second ability, okay? So, Elemental Ward. So this one is an interesting one. I kept going with electricity because of the shield capacity and status chance. And with the build that I run, it's just a little different. Where you can turn this around is actually going with cold damage, because you get a shit ton of armor and you get a pretty fat ass damage multiplier, and you get a nice chunky status chance to it. It's a good time. Vex armor is Vex armor. Massive armor increase, massive damage increase, and you can still gain it incrementally per kill with melee and ranged kills. So you don't have to, like, if you're hit with Overguard, you can, this was the fix to it, right? And with Guardian Armor, damage absorption, which is fine. You get a little health buff, and you get a duration here. So basically, this thing is constantly keying back up. For lack of a better way to put it, the augment is keying back up the timer on Vex Armor. It's the easiest way to put it. And then effigy is just effigy. Effigy is the little dragon skin. It's kind of whatever. If you're doing Profiteer, you'll understand. Effigy's fine. But the function behind this particular build, okay, is who gives a shit about efficiency when it ends up being 1266 energy? Like, you don't care about negative efficiency. Range is basically useless at this fucking point. So, one of the big, well, there's two big keys to this, okay? The two big keys are Guardian Armor and Hunter Adrenaline. Now, quick thinking is in here on the just in case just in case you forget to cast the two, and all of a sudden you get popped and Arcane Aegis does not trigger. That is the only reason why quick thinking is on here. Otherwise, I would probably use, I don't know, any goddamn thing else I felt like. You know, I mean, hell, you know, you could use adaptation there. You know, you can use you know, a Mars Hatred because you get more ability, strength, and armor. You know, Boreal's Hatred, you know, ability efficiencies, whatever. Shield capacity's fine. What is Naira's? I always forget what the hell Naira's is. Naira's Hatred, health and ability duration. I mean, nothing wrong with doing that either. It's just, that's a pure if I goof up, which is true of what quick thinking does. You know, like, I could put Naira's Hatred on there. It's just fine. Gives me a little bit more health, but the duration is what I give a fuck about, right? But Arcane Battery caps out. Between Warcry and Vex Armor, absolutely caps the fuck out to where you get maximum energy from this. Okay? So you end up with a ton of energy. Just saying. It's an interesting build. Okay? Octavia. Broken but boring. Straightforward. That's just how she is. Name another frame that does it, though. Name another broken-ass frame that just stands there invisible and you spam crouch, especially if you have a really stupid long duration like I do. You couple efficiency behind 318% duration, and you're literally standing there for 49 seconds before you have to spam crouch. Really 46, because you have to spam crouch in that 3-second time frame. And everything on the fucking, everything within the range of the abilities dies. And it completely scales to the level. She's busted beyond comprehension, and, you know, her melee buff basically puts you in a position to where you can basically just one-tap an Acolyte. Just chuck a glaive. Doesn't matter what glaive you're running, just all within reason. Just saying. Varuna. Thanks to an augment, Varuna is now basically a room clear, you know, slam nuker frame. Again, Varuna has such an interesting setup because every single ability has its own passive that you can activate on the fly. Okay? And then if they would have done something with Varuna's fourth ability, Roar would not be on this build. Because if I could mod the fourth ability like an exalted weapon, because personally I think it should be an exalted weapon, that would be interesting. And in my opinion, it would be a pseudo-exalted weapon because it doesn't exist. So it being its own weapon that I can mod would make her fourth ability so much more enticing to me. But because it's not, I'd rather just go for weapon damage output, which makes this really, really stupid. Because you got health and energy regen, which as long as you have equilibrium, all you give a shit about is just the health because that's all you care about. And then the augment for this is basically just a massive amount of damage spread. Have a nice day. Varuna is really, really busted with Prey of Dinar. You know, and an Arcane Steadfast just to help you in case you know, have a goof with Lycus Hunt. That's about it. Because it is a lot of casting. It's, you know, you go invisible, hit an enemy, you know, with the second ability, power slam, go invisible again, and rinse and repeat, and then keep up, keep Roar up, keep Lycus Hunt up. And as long as you're constantly killing, Lycus Hunt will just stay where it is. It's a good time. Again, we're 25 frames in. Who's like the other? Which one of these does not belong? As of yet, we're still at Nezha and Ureli. Like, really, none of these other frames have really matched up to each other at this point. Jade. The Prego Warframe, the flying Warframe that does armor stripping, slowing, heat procking, alternate, has an exalted weapon, the Glory Exalted weapon. There ain't a frame like this in the game. Has, let's see here, 2 auras. Nobody else has that. I mean, Jade is a very, very unique monster all in herself. Volt. Old school, old OG Volt. This build, pure shield regen build. This is just Arcane Aegis, Vigilante Vigor, Fast Deflection, Shock Trooper. And then Eclipse for some survivability and Arcane Battery. I know that sounds weird, right? Arcane Battery. Guess what? I have armor and I have shield capacity. That's it. And then energy, and then just a little bit of duration. Now, why would I go with duration over strength? I already have 243% strength. A little bit of duration gives you more speed, makes the zappy zaps last just a little bit longer, makes Eclipse last a little bit longer. Hell, even makes the shield last a little bit longer, but it kind of balances out the build for the speed part. And you fly through the mission like a maniac. It's a good time. Hydroid. Again, after the rework, prior to the rework, I personally think Hydroid was absolute dog shit. Just the funny, meme-ish hentai frame. After the rework, no more goofy puddle of just sitting somewhere and just doing minimal amounts of impact damage. But now, you are truly raining acid rain. Excuse me. The Tidal Surge is actually a really good status cleansing function plus movement mechanic. Plunder is unbelievably good. Plunder is here. I'm going to use the second ability, scoop everybody up, and then hit Plunder and build myself up to max damage output and max armor for the duration of the ability. It's a good time. It's really, really, really good time. And then the fourth ability, depending on what you're doing. If you're farming with Hydroid, I can see having the fourth ability and ditching, the first ability. Excuse me. Totally get that. But just saying. I mean, hell, you really don't have to dump the abilities, but you can get a little spammy with Hydroid, and he is a little injury hungry. Now, here's where we finally get to something that has replaced something else. Wisp. Wisp basically replaced Titania. Or not Titania, Trinity. And only in the case of health regen. Wisp is an immediate action. Just come over to my reservoirs and you're healed. I'm going to be like Jesus Christ and just be like, poof, you're healed. Wisp also gives electric charges and speed buffs instead. Now, Trinity gave you energy and health. Wisp does not give energy. So, albeit they do have similar function, one function in particular, they both have their own right to be squad support. Like, I have yet to find anybody who's mad that I'm running a Trinity. Right? I've yet to see a Trinity mad that I'm running a Wisp. I don't think most players are wired like that. I'm just saying. Next one, Titania, the Pixie frame. The only... Well, okay, there's... Technically, I want to say the only other flying frame... Personally, there's only 2. Somebody will argue that Hildren's a flying frame. Hildren's flying mechanic is more hovering, because Hildren is capped to a certain level of height, and if the terrain changes, she will follow it. Titania and Jade are flying frames. The difference is I wish they would actually allow for the Arcwing style of flight with Jade, rather than the weird, just, floaty float, and then I have to use the crouch and the jump buttons to make her actually go up and down. I wish that you could just treat it like an Arcwing and fly around chasing your reticle like Titania, or like Titania. But Titania is the pixie frame. That's all she is. She's just a pixie frame. Her melee is dog shit. I mean, yes, with, a little bit of love now, you can make it work okay. But, the third ability for me is the sky's the limit. You can, basically make yourself status immune, turn yourself into a pixie, throw whatever the fuck you want to on the third ability, and just basically shoot with Dex Pixia and have a nice day. Great for relic farming, great for speeding through missions, and so on and so forth. Corvex. The Radiation Rockman. Now, with the release of the newest augment, and as you can see, like I said it in the augment video, I thought Ophinum Eyes had an interesting application. And I tested it, and I really dig it. So, I really wish I'd have done that before the augment video, because I just had a feeling something was telling me, hey, an armor strip on line of sight only, instead of wrecking wall, might actually be cool. It is. Finally got a max rank universal fallout, and guess what? It's really fucking good max rank. But this particular build, again, like I said, you don't have to do the 2 Umbra Forma, but it helps. But this is all you need. You just walk around in your 4th ability with a massive amount of energy, and there's just no fucks to give on this. You are just completely immune to damage. The only time you have to come out of it is to recast, Ophinum Eyes, and then eventually, and I do mean eventually, the pillars will run out of duration because you keep going in and out of that 4th ability every like 40 some odd seconds, I think. How long it lasts? Get over there. 51 seconds. It's solid. Or if you want to move the pillars, the timer will start going again once it's done killing with radiation. But Force Crucible has become quite interesting. Just saying. This setup here is just like, you ain't dying. As long as you don't get, hit with violence or with a nullifier, you're just going to kill everything. Unless it's immune to radiation, it's just going to explode like popcorn and die. Is it OP? No, but is it really good? Yeah. Atlas, again, the pseudo-exalted. Again, you tell me. Hold on. God bless it. So, we've got 2 frames now, or technically 4. We have, Nezha and Ureli, and then we have Trinity and Wisp. Those are the only real combination style frames thus far that really have similar function. And I'm being very loose with this, and I'm sorry this video is so long, but I'm trying to prove a point here, okay? And I know it's probably already been proved at this point. Oh, we have Atlas. What kind of speed through this? Rockman. Turn people to rock, punch them with the, freshly reworked pseudo-exalted weapon, rinse and repeat. Gain armor with rubble heap, and yeah, it's pretty funny. Mag. OG mag. Old school mag. Armor strip. Lift people up, armor strip, put a mag bubble around something, and they fucking die. She's pretty straightforward. Caliban, the sentient frame. Not to be confused with the Eidolon frame of Revenant. Caliban has, thank God for the reworked Caliban, because that made Caliban insanely better. Still not OP, but very good for defensive stuff, very good for just not getting bullets in your ass in general. Overall, very solid frame. Ash. As you see, Ash is still low on my list because Ash is very fucking slow, but with the pseudo-exalted rework, Ash got really good. It's just a very, very kind of slow, niche playstyle, but you get lots of damage out of this build. Excalibur, again, with the exalted rework, just being able to throw melee influence on there and change the emissive color makes this all the difference in the world. Garuda is an interesting one. Now, Garuda has static survivability. I don't know why I've got the retro disco lights going on here, but I dig it. I'm fine with it. Well, I want to see if that changes. Nope, we're just sticking with disco, baby. We got some bell bottoms. Anyway, Garuda's an interesting one because her base 2 Blood Altar is perfectly fine. The downside to Blood Altar is that you're static to that healing point. To where Gloom is a life-stealing ability that you can just roam around freely, kill everything that you want to, and just steal any health that might get taken from you back. You can also bloodlet your health away with a third ability to feed into your energy pool, and with Gloom, you basically immediately steal it back the moment you kill stuff. So it's a really good kind of synergy combo. You don't have to use it. Root is also one of the few frames, really the only frame, that you actually have the choice of equipping a melee or not because of Garuda Prime, or the Garuda Talons, right? So if you don't equip a melee, you get these cool talons, these big predator talons that you can just rip out and yank on people. And if you don't like them, then they're just an aesthetic and you put whatever melee you want to on there. Either way, very interesting. Zephyr. And yeah, I know Zephyr's low on my fucking list, but Zephyr to me is... Zephyr is almost too powerful. I know it sounds nuts, but Zephyr is almost too powerful. And it's funny enough because you can tell just by how few shards I have on her. Zephyr is one of the few frames that doesn't have barely any shards. Okay. And it comes down to the basis of you basically pull enemies in with air burst, hit them, drop tornadoes, and then just shoot the tornadoes and everything fucking dies. And while you're doing all of this, guess what? Turbulence, as long as you're hovering up in the air, turbulence, you're never going to die. All you have to do is occasionally dodge Eximus abilities. That's it. And then, yeah, you can go hover, you can pull enemies in with a grouping ability, you stop all incoming projectiles, and then you create tornadoes that you can basically apply 3 different damages from per second just from the tornadoes, but then you shoot the damn things, and all the energy that you throw into those tornadoes just gets boomed onto the enemies. Pure synergized base kit, absolutely broken fucking frame, and still people sleep on her. I don't know why. Baruch. Again, one of those few frames like Limbo. And I hate to even put Baruch and Limbo in the same fucking sentence, or the same comparison level. But Baruch, in my opinion, has been and probably will always be a frame that I will only ever play solo. Because Baruch is just busted. Okay? I mean, let's just be honest here, okay? Let's just group some enemies here, right? Get rid of a little bit of restraint here. Hi! Here, well, I mean, here, that's gonna be enough. Everything's dead. Actually punched a falling dead body. Now, here's the hiccup. If you can't group and put enemies to sleep, right, then how are you supposed to keep your restraint meter eroded? Makes it a little bit more difficult, and Baruch, in my opinion, is far more fun running the Desert Wind. So just going all monk punchy crazy makes it very difficult if you've got a high kill count squad that you're running with. So for me, Baruch is definitely a solo frame. Insanely good though. Haro, another one of those really, really insanely good setups that really no squad ever is mad about seeing you run. It sounds nuts, but it is the truth. You can feed the squad energy with Thurible. You can basically rip your own shields off for a really, really, really good time. Okay, so you basically smash your own shields off, and the way you kind of go about this is actually you hit your 4, you smash your shields off, and then you recollect your shields with your 2, and then go burr. And then if you really just want to help the squad, do Thurible for a few, get the energy count up just a little bit, and just start murdering everything. You just feed the squad energy, you have a massive amount of survivability coupled with fire rate, coupled with crit, get a nice little nasty headshot multiplier. Like, Haro is just a really, really well-rounded frame. Mirage. Now, this isn't even my normal build, this is just my ESO build for helping people rank gear up. So, Mirage got a lighting rework thanks to Whispers in the Wall, and because of that, Mirage's Disco Ball coupled with Terrify just kills everything. Find me another frame that does this. Seriously. Throw a Disco Ball down a hallway and everything just melts from status procs. It's a good time. Gauss, there is not another frame in this game like Gauss. Gauss, I think I will go to my grave saying that Gauss is probably the best synergized frame in this game. Everything plays off of everything else perfectly. Okay? No question about it. Moving generates an electrical current that fills Gauss's battery. Shields recharge up to 120% faster, while the recharge delay is up to 80% shorter based on battery level. So the whole point is to keep your battery up. Well, cold procs increase battery, heat take away. Laws of thermodynamics, here we go. Mach Rush, move faster. Gain more battery filling function easier. Kinetic plating, damage reduction. Notice, as long as you have 100% energy, you will get 100% damage reduction as long as the battery meter is full. That's why it shows 21 to 100. That is basing off of what your battery level is. So if you are max battery, you ain't gonna die. Thermal Sunder. Apply cold procs. I know a lot of people like using the heat, but Thermal Sunder actually applies cold procs, which fills up battery meter. Red Line. Burr. Just brr. Attack speed, fire rate, reload, casting speed, everything is fucking increased with this. There is not another frame in this game that is synergized that damn well. Mesa, the aimbot frame, I think is probably the most apt way to describe Mesa. There's a lot of ways you can play Mesa. You can play Mesa in any goddamn content you want to. Really can. Because as long as you keep melee targets away from your ass, you're just not going to die. Period. But the general form and function is to go in, turn on Regulator's Prime, make sure Ballistic Battery is turned on. Or Shatter Shield, sorry. Ballistic Battery's first ability. But you make sure that Shatter Shield is turned on, kill any melee targets, and then just auto-target the fuck out of everything, and everything fucking dies. She's very good. She's very, very, very good. Zagoth, the Headless Horsewoman, the equestrian frame. Personally, I don't necessarily like the very limited line of sight of the horses. So I just run an energy regen and a lower efficiency, but in doing so, the damage output that you can do with this fucking frame is absolutely ridiculous, and albeit weird sights is a strange ability. If you get in a pickle with an acolyte or with an well, not really an Xmas, but you know, like a bunch of enemies, you hit weird sights, you slow them all down, proc them with viral, and just hit them with doom, and then just fire a couple of times. Especially something like Kuva Sobek makes it very good. Again, find me another frame that does this. Because, yeah, you also have the ability of dying and resurrecting right at that point and just having a cooldown if you're not using her augment. Nyx, after the rework. Nyx is pretty much still Nyx, just better. I mean, mind control, timed armor strip, pure chaos with actual radiation procs now, and then an absorb bubble that, again, you can still, with the assimilate mod, you can just walk around. And, use weapons, guns, kind of just whatever the hell you want to. And it's just, generally a good time. Very survivable. Nidus. Here's our second no shield frame. Nidus is unbelievably ungoddamn killable. And I don't disagree with the person that commented back when I said Nidus had that god mode level of health. Now, it does not matter that you can build up to a ton of health, 20 some odd thousand, 30 some odd thousand health. It really doesn't matter to a point. Because you're redirecting, 90% of the damage. But as you climb up in levels, the damage gets bigger. So your health can actually take a little bit of a hit. Now, granted, if you have something like Arcane Grace, Arcane Blessing isn't even needed. Therefore, the amount of health that you build up just doesn't fucking matter, because Arcane Grace is going to trigger enough to keep you from dying, because that 90%, just like Nezha, just like Eureli's, Merlina bit, as long as you got enough health, you ain't dying. Nidus' sole function for survivability, excuse me, comes down to mutation stacks as far as this build goes. Abundant mutation, right? So you can gain more stacks. So there's a lot of larva and stomping and larva and stomping and linking to an enemy and then larva and stomping. But he makes for a incredible weapons platform that just is like he's like the ultimate disease of lack of death. Okay, he just refuses to fucking die. He's like that one cockroach in an old ghetto house that you could spray Raid on and motherfucker start taking a bath in it. This motherfucker just doesn't care, okay? He just don't like dying. It's very good. It's boring, but very good. Inaros. Now, Inaros got a rework, and Inaros is better. Okay, personally, I do believe that Inaros is better because at least Inaros actually has a healing function now instead of just praying that Arcane Grace works right. I still think Inaros is not much better than what he was before, but he's more fun. His tornado actually has realistic function. Desiccation can just go away, and you can put whatever the hell you want to. Energy, whatever, doesn't really matter. You can still build up armor without actually needing an augment mod now that does the same damn thing the augment did before. And now you can throw sand at people and make them create sand cavats. I mean, Naros is fine. Not great, not terrible. It's a good time. Necros. Now, here's where Korra took over. Korra took over Hydroid and Necros' farming abilities, okay? Because Necros is a farming frame, thanks to Despoil, okay? Or Desecrate, sorry, Despoil's the augment. Basically extra loot by dead enemies. So the more enemies you fuck up and tear up and rip apart and everything else, so, you know, like the Ripkas are really good for that, by the way. The more you gore enemies, and like you desecrate body parts too, so you can get more loot that way. Now, is Korra better overall? No, actually, Nidus is actually the better farmer. But Korra can basically centralize your farming, so you're not worried about, you know, like if you have like some stupid range build that you've got loot spawning in another room, to where Korra's just going to keep it right there at her Strangle Dome. But Necros is quite good in his own right. It's just, if you're farming, me personally, I like to have everything come to me and then just farm it there. Necros is just like, follow me, guys, we're gonna go find all the shit, and then when stuff dies behind you, you're like, fuck, it's back there. Necros is good, though. Okay, not bad. Equinox. Now, this is a frame that confuses the fucking bejesus out of people on how to make her work. And here's the thing. Equinox is a he and a she, depending on what form you run. Now, personally, I run a Dayform Equinox. Quite specifically, I run a Dayform Equinox so I can just nuke everything near me. So the first minute of any mission that you run into gets a little hairy. Once you start getting kills, you know, get some health orbs, you get a little bit of a buffer, and then you just start absolutely demolishing everything that fucking, you know, in the entire room. Collect the loot, kill enemies, rinse and repeat. This is how this playstyle works. It's kind of just unbelievably good. It's like a hairy 30 to 45 seconds of survivability, because you kind of have to bounce around like Yoda and, you know, Attack of the Clones, just so you can get a bullet in your ass. But you just basically want to put weapons on there that do high damage, high kill count, you know, something Torrid, you know, and then whatever, you know, Cycron, Nucor, Prismatic Storm, whatever the fuck works for you as a secondary. Glade Prime works good because it kills groups, so does Azorus. You get the idea. And once you build up the damage enough, you armor strip, release it, everything fucking dies. Equinox is very good, just a little sketchy at the beginning. Ember, got a slight touch up. Ember's okay. You want heat procs. You know, they lighten the energy draw on her. You know, I have Thermal Sunder over the stupid Fireball because heat procs from Thermal Sunder works way better. My personal opinion. Overall, Ember is Ember. Still doesn't do World on Fire, but, you know, it's alright. You know, Ember's fine. Stynex, the beginning frame that has now been overshadowed by two other frames and an Arcane to give Overguard. Our Spartan frame. Nothing wrong with Stynex. Stynex is a great frame to have, especially, you know, EDA, ETA, stuff like that. It's totally fine. Definitely wouldn't say no to a Stynex. You can regen energy, regen health, armor strip, build Overguard that feeds to the squad. It's all good stuff going on with Stynex. The problem is that Frost gives Overguard better, Dante gives Overguard better. So the only thing that you're missing out is the energy regen, which is just kind of meh. Like, we should all be responsible for our own energy most of the time, so it's just like, you know, again, it's a trade-off, because the Overguard from the Spears of Death, basically, the final stand, it's great. But when you can give, like, because the way this reads out, you know, Overguard cap, right? So we come over here. Here's the hiccup, right? So Dante, when you give Overguard to your allies, you give the same amount that you give to yourself to the allies. Frost, whenever you give Overguard to yourself, you give that same amount to your allies. This, you give half. Who's the better support? The better support comes into the fact of energy regen, you know, energy rate per kill. So it's energy regen that you get back, or energy gained per kill. So it's like, all right, but who's really like the better support if you're going to compare it in the way of Overguard is really, you know, kind of a good way to support your squad? Stynex is good, but Frost and Dante just do it better. Cyto 9. Again, I will say, Cyto 9 is best played solo due to the sniper and invisibility, weak point kills. If you're in a high kill count squad, Cyto 9 becomes very much problematic on staying invisible, and that's his survivability. Cyto 9 is very fucking powerful. So very good frame, especially for a new one. But again, tell me a frame that has a gun, all right? Like this. A giant pissed off sniper rifle for an exalted weapon. Soldier boy over here, right? Oberon, old vestiges of Trinity and Oberon being squad supporters. They still do that. Okay? They still do. Get the right build, and all of a sudden you've got the encompassing grassy knoll of radiation death that you can armor strip, you can heal, yourself and your allies. And again, this is another one of those shield regen condemn builds. But this works, right? Like, there's nothing wild about this. I had to tinker with this trying to figure out just the right amount of range because I didn't want to have to throw too many forma at it, hence why the 9-point overextended. But the whole reason behind that is to get the 360 degree. Thank God I had I had this extra overextended because I had sold the rest of them. I had this one that hadn't sold yet, and I was like, okay, let's see how this works. But no, this is pretty much how this works. But you can gain a bunch of health with Arcane Blessing. Again, not necessary because you can heal yourself. This just gives you a buffer. And then a bunch of shields. And again, this isn't even shield regen here. Okay, this is just a bunch of shields and then adding to it with Condemn. So, there you go. There's Oberon. Needs some love. Vauban is another one. Very interesting frame. Again, we're going to see, guess what, Vigilante Vigor, Fast Deflection, Arcane Aegis. As long as you are running those three, it makes it much harder for Vauban to die. And obviously, Primary Direction, having a bunch more shields. And at least one Augur mod to continually build your shields up whenever you're casting abilities. You do these kinds of things, and Vauban will actually work just fine and dandy. But Vauban wants duration, Vauban wants range, and then this particular setup, Vauban wants shields. Saying. Pretty simple. Banshee. Banshee is best saved with Gloom. Pure and to the point. Banshee is saved with Gloom. Life stealing on a frame that really has no survivability, but does have some function by armor stripping, which is fine, even though armor's not a huge problem these days. Sonar is a little hit or miss, but as long as you hit these marked points, the damage multiplier more than makes up for it. And then Silence basically turns off Eximus abilities and Acolyte abilities. So as long as you have it cast before Violence can cast it, Violence can't fuck with you. Violence can just come stab you instead, or shoot at you. And again, as long as Violence shows up and you already have Silence going, you Sonic Boom and kill the bastard, and that's it. So as long as you have Gloom, whatever damage you do take, Gloom's going to slow him down quite a damn bit, and you just kill them and lifesteal from them. It's pretty straightforward. Banshee's not great, but not terrible. Limbo. I know, going long on this video, and I'm sorry. Limbo. There is a lot of ways to play Limbo. Okay? And I'm not even going to try to front and act like I'm a Limbo main or a Limbo, freak or anything like that, okay? But the truth of it is that the main complaint about Limbo is that Limbo is a very disruptive frame. Okay? Primary reason behind that is Cataclysm coupled with Stasis. It's kind of like Frost Bubble used to be. You can't shoot into it, can't shoot out of it. And enemies just get stuck on the boundary of it. So depending on what your range is built up to, depends on how much of a disruption on the map it can be. Now, there are Limbo players out there that openly and gladly say, well, that's a you problem, not a me problem. I don't disagree with that sentiment, except for the fact of when you're going through and trying to, complete missions quickly, all of a sudden Limbo's slowing shit down and you're like, fuck. Limbo is an absurdly good solo frame. Limbo is not a great squad frame, depending on the use. Like, mobile defense is perfectly fine. Limbo is a perfect mobile defense frame. Especially if you got a squad sitting there to help support you, because as long as you got Silence, the only thing Eximus can do is shoot at you. That's not that hard to get away from. Their abilities are the problems. So Limbo is not a bad frame. Limbo is just kind of an annoyance for squads, depending on the mission type. Rhino is Rhino. Rhino has one small problem, okay? Truthfully, one small problem. Rhino has an energy pool problem. That's just the truth, okay? Now, if Rhino's iron skin would have actually remained armor, instead of becoming overguard, arcane battery would become something real with Rhino, and that energy problem wouldn't be a thing anymore. But as long as you're not completely tanked in efficiency, it's not that big of a problem to overcome, and you can get millions of overguard with this motherfucker. So as long as you don't fall off the map or run into a nullifier, it's fine. Again, that's the other real problem with Rhino, is that iron skin is an ability. And for some reason, the Overguard is treated like an ability, not as a stack setup like any of the other Overguard frames. You fall off a map with Styanax or Dante or Frost, you keep your Overguard. You fall off a map with Rhino, you don't have Overguard anymore. I am so confused with this particular setup. Rhino's a just fine frame. I understand people maining him. I understand people playing him. But there's a couple of goofy factors that you just look at like, why is this a thing? Umbra is basically like here because I forgot to put Ivara back here. That's it. And Umbra is basically the triple Umbra version, slightly tankier version of Excalibur. Umbra's fine, just slightly tankier than Excalibur. That's really it. Speaking of Ivara, if you like slow-paced potential nuke playstyle stuff, Ivara is a pretty interesting frame. Not perfect, very slow, but very usable, and not, you don't have to be slow with Ivara, right? Like you really don't. You do not have to play the slow play style of Ivara. The truth of it is, though, is that Ivara does have the problem of, like, where is it? The zip line, right? So the zip line does give you some Dashwire creates a traversal zip line. So you can do CC stuff with the noise one. You can make yourself invisible with one of the arrows. You can get the zip line, and the zip line, if I remember correctly, does give you some damage reduction. You also have an exalted weapon here, which is fine. You have Prowl, which is the super slow energy drain per second. I'm going to pick pockets while I walk past everybody kind of thing. And a nice headshot bonus. And for the life of me, I can't even remember what the hell second ability is, but I never use. Var is just not my bag, okay? Sorry. Just not. Valkyr is definitely one note. Sadly. Until they rework Valkyr, Valkyr is definitely one note. I have claws, I shall swing claws. I am invincible while I have these claws as long as violence doesn't show up or I accidentally slide into a nullifier. Valkyr is very good for certain aspects, but for the most part, Valkyr's a pain in the ass because her old kit's kind of a joke. It's just kind of a meme because, like, the fourth ability doesn't really work well with anything else. So it's either work with everything else and survive, or work with the fourth ability and just don't ever die. You know? As long as you have energy. And then Kome is like the queen of endurance. Due to the decrees and the way her abilities function, Kome is unbelievably good at endurance runs, but a little lackluster on non-endurance. But you tell me, okay? The whole reason I do this, not as a tier list, not as a here, let me show all these frames off kind of thing, but you tell me where they have screwed up with this, right? You tell me where frames are too much like another frame or direct replacements to where people don't want to just play other frames, so now they're stuck on the back burner. Like, Rhino was basically replaced by Nezha. I'll give you that. Okay? Nezha was basically replaced by Revenant. In a way. But Nezha has some functions that Revenant doesn't. So Nezha still has some pretty good function. You know, Styanax showed up and was this great supporter once they brought Styanax's augment out. But then not long after, Frost gets an augment and then Dante gets released. So it's like you've got these two fuckers that are giving way better overguard, and Dante gives the best because that overguard regens over a short period of time. So it's just like, okay. So as a solo, you know, overguard that's not ability based, as far as it doesn't, you don't lose it. Kalervo is the best ability based overguard for singular purposes. But with the amount that you can get, as long as you're careful, Rhino's no punk. But Rhino was kind of replaced by Nezha, and then, you know, when Iron Skin finally got worked over to Overguard, it was a little, you know, too little too late at that point, aside from being able to build up a fuck ton. Give me your thoughts, please. Give me your thoughts on, like, you know, what frames you think are just too overshadowing and horrible as a replacement for another frame. Like, you know, I agree. Any frame that has an RW next to it, I want to see a rework on. Even though Chroma's that high at this point, like I've got Chroma, I've got Oberon, I've got Banshee, I've got Limbo, I've got Rhino, I've got Valkyr. Those are all frames I would love to see some basic, if not top to bottom, reworks. You tell me. You think they should just keep coming out with cool new frames, or should we just kick back and really focus on reworks? I personally like the first better. You let me know if you like the first or the latter. Either way, thank you very much for watching. As always, catch you in the next one.